Hola chicos y chicas, hoy día vamos a practicar nuestra gramática, ¿ok? Y vamos a hablar específicamente de el verbo haber, okay? The first thing I want to get off the bat here is that, move my face so I'm not right in front of this pterodactyl. The first thing I want to get off the bat here is that this is not pronounced haber or haber or anything that sounds like that. Remember, our H is always silent in Spanish, and then our vowels are always pronounced exactly the same way. So it should be a ver, okay, a ver. And then it says that at the beginning of your class packet as well. So hopefully when you are seeing this verb over and over and over again in your class packet, you should say it in your head like I am saying it out loud to you right now. Don't repeat it to yourself over and over and over again as Haber, because that is a chemistry term. That is a guy who invented some process or discovered it or whatever. Not what we were talking about here, okay? Los objetivos de hoy son, yo puedo entender qué significa haber y cómo se usa, y yo puedo practicar el vocabulario de las noticias. This one is comprised mostly it is seen mostly in our calentamiento, our do now for today, and then pasamos el resto de la clase en el verbo haber y cómo se usa. Okay, so we can understand what haber means and how it can be used. There are a couple of different ways that we go over, and then practicing some vocab in our do now. Your deliverables today, the things you will need to complete to get like a full class grade for today, is el paquete de clase de módulo 17 y el boleto de salida que está en Elastic. ¿Ok? Eso es todo. Ok, el plan de hoy. Vamos a pasar tiempo en el calentamiento, vamos a practicar en Quizlet y escribir oraciones. Vamos a aprender del verbo haber. We are going to learn, aprender, to learn about haber. Y vamos a practicar y después vamos a probar. We are going to prove what we learned in Elastic en el boleto de salida. Okay, the exit ticket for today. So, para el calentamiento, chicos, vamos a practicar con las noticias en Quizlet. This is a different set than we have been spending the majority of our time on. En lugar de 10 minutos, instead of 10 minutos, vamos a pasar 6 minutos en Quizlet y vamos a dedicar los otros minutos a escribir oraciones con 3 verbos distintos. Okay, so we are spending about 6 minutes. I know usually when we have Quizlet as our do now, it is 10. We are spending about 6 today. You can set yourself a timer on YouTube or just search timer on Google and that will do you just fine. And then we are going to spend the rest of our do now time, about 4 minutes, escribiendo oraciones con estos verbos. So the idea here is that you are taking the verb, and then obviously you need to know what the verb means to be able to write a meaningful sentence with it. And then you should think about these endings, the AR, and ER, and how those would be conjugated. I did not say this on the slide, but here, make sure you are carefully reading directions as you go through your class packet always. Por favor, usa el pretérito o el imperfecto, o sea, el pasado. Okay, so we're still practicing our past tense conjugations, and those are the ones that we should be using. Okay, so ponle pausa a este video 10 minutos para practicar en Quizlet y después para escribir oraciones. Y seguimos. Okay, la segunda cosa en el plan de hoy es enseñar del verbo haber. So here is a part where you will need to be using this video and listening. Okay, so haber significa en el presente, okay, estamos en el presente, lo que significa ahora. This is the present tense, okay? We haven't practiced this in a long time, so remind yourself present tense is like yo estoy, yo soy, yo bebo agua, yo corro, things like that. El verbo haber en el presente significa there is or there are. Some of you may remember back to Spanish 1 when we were asked the question, ¿cuántos blank hay? Or ¿cuántas blank hay? That is asking how many of what thing are there. And then, of course, that cuantos or cuantas depends on whether you are talking about a feminine group of objects or a masculine group of objects. But whether you were talking about multiple objects or one object, you still use the same verb, I. So you could, and again, this is pronounced I, not hi or hey. None of that, okay? I. And you would respond to one of those questions. For example, if I asked you, ¿cuántas computadoras hay? maybe you're sitting just in front of your laptop, so you would say, hay una computadora. And so even though in the question I'm asking how many computers are there, multiple, right? I still use hay. And then in your question, you answer there's only one, but you still use hay, okay? So I use these examples here. I'm going to move my video again, using some vocab from this unit. Hay muchas tormentas de nieve en el invierno. Aquí es una tormenta de nieve. Okay, hay muchas tormentas de nieve en el invierno y hay una televisión en mi casa. So here we see there are multiple snowstorms. Here we see there's only one television, but we still only use I. Okay? So like I said on the last slide, and I will say again, and probably so many times that you get sick of me saying it, but haber takes the same form for the singular and the plural. And as you get a little further down in your class packet, you'll see the explanation for this, but for those of you that like to hear things or kind of talk them out, I will say it here too. The reason for this is kind of a complicated grammar one, but if you think about what we're saying in English with there is or there are, there isn't really a subject to this phrase, right? There is, what is? You could say maybe there are snowstorms, but that's not really what you're saying. The there is, it's what's called like either an impersonal or a universal statement. And so because it's impersonal or universal, Spanish defaults to the third person singular form, which would be I. When you get to Spanish 3, I think one of the first things you learn is how to use haber and conjugate it for other people and make it a composite form, which means it goes with another verb, like your present progressive, estoy comiendo or estoy hablando, but that is getting too far into detail for you today. I will move right along. Okay, el segundo uso del verbo haber en el presente. So we're still in the present, but this is a second use that is a little bit different. You can also use the phrase hay que, okay? Again, this is hay que, to express that it is necessary to do something. So if I wanted to say, to understand, it is necessary to listen, which sounds really strange in English, but I want to make sure we're getting the idea of what purpose this serves grammatically. I think this is a sentence we can all agree with, or at least all teachers out there. Dirías, you would say, para entender hay que escuchar. Okay, so here we see to listen, right? Or to understand, excuse me. Hay que escuchar. It is necessary that one must listen. So the reason we're using I here, even if I'm talking to you, I wanted to say specifically, it is necessary that you listen if you want to understand. I am directing my speech directly toward you, but because I'm using this sort of impersonal universal phrasing, I still only use that singular third person conjugation. It's like saying, oh, it's necessary to, like I said on the last slide, or one must listen. It makes it a little bit more polite and a little bit more impersonal when I say it that way. I'll move my face again. I'm doing that a lot this module. So even for phrases that are directed personally, if I wanted to talk to you specifically or I wanted to talk about a single person or about a group of people, I would still use this impersonal phrasing, hay que, because, I'm missing my last bit there, because it is that sort of impersonal universal way of saying it. Just like expressions with tener que, which we hopefully remember from earlier this year, or any other two verb phrases where verbs come right next to each other, the second verb that comes after haber, whatever you're saying it is necessary to do or that one must do, is in its infinitive and unconjugated form. And that is just following the same rule that we always follow in Spanish, that when one verb comes directly after the other, it should be in its infinitive form. There are exceptions, obviously, but this is not the time to discuss those. Okay, so now we're in el imperfecto, moving right along. So this is really quick. Make sure you are taking notes that you can go back to in your class packets. They're in the purple box in your class packet. So in el imperfecto, it is very similar. It serves a similar purpose, and you would say there was or there were. And a reminder that el imperfecto refers to one of our two past tenses, right? And it is for the past tense that is more ongoing. There's an unclear beginning and end. Maybe you're talking about a habit. All of those things follow under the imperfecto category. So we are in the past tense. We were just in the present. Now we're in the past. And we're talking about a specific past tense, something ongoing. But it means essentially the same thing. There was or there were. And the conjugation that we will use, again, there's only one, it's that singular third person, is había, okay? So here are some examples. I guess I have to move my face again. This should say there was or there were, and había. Let me actually fix that right now because I apologize for that being incorrect. And then as I'm doing that, I will talk you through how in 2003, en 2003, había mucha nieve. Okay, so we're talking about a whole year there, not specifically saying for 1 year entirely, but saying like in the period of that year, there was a lot of snow. So this is clearly imperfect because it is talking about an ongoing action. And we can see that because we're talking about snow, obviously we should be using the singular form. But then in the second example, which is also incorrect, oh my goodness. I'm glad I'm here to catch myself. In the second example, we have two televisiones, but we're still using había because it is this impersonal, universal use of the verb. So en mi juventud había dos televisiones en mi casa. Okay, so this is actually kind of an easy verb that we're learning here because we are really only going to need to use one conjugation no matter what we're talking about. So we have había. In the imperfect, haber takes the same form for singular and plural, like we just talked about. So the second use of haber in el imperfecto, it is the exact same as the second use of haber in the presente. If you want to say it was necessary to do something, so maybe you're telling a story in the past, you're just moving over that use that we talked about in the present to the past tense. I'm using a slightly different example though, in case the first one didn't quite work for you. So if you wanted to say, to get a good grade, you had to work hard, you could say, I'm going to give a little drum roll here while we think about, okay, what is good grade? How do we say to work? How are we going to incorporate this phrase? Y to get a good grade, you had to work hard. Para sacar una buena nota, había que trabajar. Okay, so we are saying essentially the same thing here that we did in our example with present tense, haber que, but we are just conjugating it in the imperfect, había que trabajar. And again, to really drive this point home between imperfect and our other past tense, in the imperfect, we're talking about ongoing actions or habits. Hopefully, if you're talking about working hard, that is not something that you do for one moment and one moment only, or only for a very specified period of time. Hopefully, that's a habit. That is something ongoing, okay? I'm doing my hand motion here to tell you that we are dealing with imperfect, okay? Y, same thing here. We are always using our impersonal, universal way of conjugating this verb instead of saying you need to study or he needs to listen or he needs to do that or you need to do that. You're just using the impersonal phrase and saying it needs to be done, right? One must work if you want to get a good grade, if one wants to get a good grade, okay? Just like these same expressions, the second verb, había que trabajar. Trabajar would be the second verb here. That should be left unconjugated because you're already doing the conjugating here. Okay, finally we arrive at el pretérito. El pretérito I'm doing last because it has the weirdest conjugation and it is actually used most infrequently. Might have to split up my video here. El verbo haber en el pretérito significa there was or there were, but it is for one-time actions with a definite beginning and ending. And it is one of our special irregulars, one of our Fuji verbs. It falls into the U category, which means haber obviously doesn't have a U in it to begin with, but does when you conjugate it. So it becomes hubo. And it is only used for, not very frequently, it is only used, at least for our purposes in this course, to talk about storms. Like there was a storm last night, it began suddenly, or like events in the news. So if there was a robbery, you would say hubo un robo or something like that. I am going to go ahead and pause and then create another video so I am not totally rushed at the end of this here. So I'll see you in just a moment.